The M1070 tractor and the M1000 trailer combine to make a heavy equipment transporter system that fully satisfies the difficult mission of loading, unloading, and transporting Army equipment and crews worldwide. The new heavy equipment transporter, the M1070 tractor combined with the M1000 semi-trailer, is primarily designed to haul the M1A1 main battle tank, but also transports other tanks, vehicles, and heavy equipment weighing in excess of 70 tons. When it's fully loaded, the system has a gross combination weight of 231,400 pounds and an operating range of 325 miles. But before the HET can fulfill its mission, both the tractor and the semi-trailer must be properly prepared. First, it's important to make sure that the trailer is on as level ground as possible. The first step in preparing the tractor is ensuring that the CTIS rotary switch is at the appropriate setting. Be sure to refer to your operator's manual for setting the CTIS. Next, the tractor and semi-trailer need to be aligned approximately 15 feet from the payload. The tractor must be positioned in a straight line with the semi-trailer. Failure to do this may damage the winch cables. The offset angle of the tractor and semi-trailer is visually checked by an assistant, and any adjustments are made if needed. Next, put the tractor in neutral and apply the parking brakes. Turn the PTO switch on and make sure the beacon light is on. Then, remove the chock blocks from stowage. Chock the tractor at the fourth axle on both sides at the front and rear of the tires. And the semi-trailer at the number 1 bogie, both front and rear. Now begin preparing the trailer for loading. First, an assistant needs to remove a manila rope from stowage. One end must be tied to the street side front lifting eye on the semi-trailer. The other end is pulled back through the rear snatch block and forward to the front curbside corner of the platform and secured to the front curbside lifting eye. Next, the 4 payload chock blocks must be disassembled and adjusted to accommodate the road wheels of the tank. The street side front chock block must be placed and secured about 10 inches from the forward edge of the platform. The curbside chock needs to be about 14 inches from the forward edge. Then place the 2 rear chocks, one above the street side number 1 bogie, the other alongside the number 4 bogie on the ground. Remove 12 curb guides from stowage. Align and install 5 on each side, saving the remaining 2 to install on the beaver tail section after the ramps are lowered. Because semi-trailers are outfitted with various size chains, all of the chains need to be inventoried before being placed on the platform. Once you've inventoried the chains, it's important to refer to your manual and familiarize yourself with the tie-downs needed to properly secure the payload. The street side and curbside parallel tie-down chains must be laid out. Then the curbside and street side angled payload tie-down chains. Next, the beacon warning light is lowered before adjusting or lowering the loading ramps. Otherwise, the equipment can be damaged. Next, adjust the semi-trailer platform height to the pre-loading position. The tilt bed of the new HET helps make loading and unloading easier. Start the APU. Remember to always wear hearing protection within 10 feet of the APU while it's running, or injury can result. Run the APU at full throttle for at least 3 to 5 minutes so it can warm up properly, or premature failure can occur and shorten the life of the engine. Be sure to pull the suspension shutoff valve handle to the adjust position before operating any platform or gooseneck valve handles. This valve isolates the suspension and prevents operation. If it is not properly positioned, severe equipment damage can result. Release the semi-trailer parking brakes. Simultaneously, pull up and hold both the front curb side and street side suspension valve handles, raising the front of the platform to the 50-inch mark. Then check the platform for correct height adjustment using a crowbar. Hold the rear suspension valve handle down to lower the rear of the platform to the 34-inch mark. And again, check the platform for the correct height. Lower both support legs until they are firmly on the ground. Then, lower both loading ramps. Using a crowbar, the loading ramp span is adjusted to match the disabled M1 tank tracks. A crew member needs to stand on the beaver tail to push the ramp back against the stow chain until it's perpendicular to the platform. Then, the small end of the crowbar is inserted into the bar strip, and a crew member pushes and pulls the bar to slide the ramp to the furthest outboard position. Next, apply the semi-trailer parking brakes, and align and install the 2 remaining curb guides on the beaver tail. The prime difference between the M1070 and M911 tractor is that the M1070 tractor has an auxiliary winch system, which is used to pull the main winch cables to the rear of the semi-trailer for attachment to the payload. The main winch cables must be prepared for loading. It's important to remember that hearing protection must be worn when operating the winches or near the winching station, or injury to personnel can result. Other important precautions to take include always wearing gloves when handling cable and keeping all personnel off the semi-trailer platform while the payload is being pulled on with winches. First, make sure the PTO switch is on. Then raise and secure the winch guard and release the auxiliary winch kickout. Disconnect the auxiliary winch cable. Pull it along the street side of the gooseneck and over the platform to the front of the disabled tank. Then attach the shackles to the recovery eyes. Remove the auxiliary snatch block from stowage. And attach to the large shackle on the street side upper left recovery eye on the tank. Pass the auxiliary winch cable through the auxiliary snatch block, pulling the cable forward over the platform. and along the curb side of the gooseneck toward the passenger side winch cable. Engage the driver's side winch kickout and the passenger side winch kickout. Then push the cable hold-down lever on and pay out the passenger side winch cable until there's enough slack. Disconnect the passenger side winch cable from stowage and attach it to the auxiliary winch cable. Then engage the auxiliary winch kickout and disengage the passenger side winch kickout. Make sure that the auxiliary winch cable doesn't get crossed or knot up on the winch, or injury can occur. Push down on the auxiliary winch lever. Then release the auxiliary winch lever when the cable reaches the front of the platform. Route the cable through the gooseneck cable guide and continue pulling the cable to the auxiliary snatch block until it's about 12 inches away. Then pull more cable out until it touches the ground and disconnect the auxiliary winch cable from the passenger side winch cable. Repeat the same process to connect the driver's side winch cable. Then remove and stow the auxiliary winch cable and auxiliary snatch block. The tractor and semi-trailer are now ready for loading. Crew members connect the passenger side winch cable to the right recovery eye on the tank and the driver's side winch cable to the left recovery eye. When winching payloads onto the semi-trailer, a straight winch cable pull is the preferred method. A crossed winch cable pull may be used if a significant directional control problem is possible. The winch speed control must be in low for maximum pull when loading payloads or equipment can be damaged. Remember that all ground personnel must stand clear of the winch cables except when handling or injury could result. As the tank is being loaded, one crew member needs to stand on the curb side of the payload and one on the street side. The spotter on the curb side acts as the primary ground guide and gives directions to the winch operator. Place the winch speed control switch on low and the engine speed control switch on high idle. Briefly lock and release. Then engage both the driver's side and passenger side winch kickouts. Pay in both winch cables until they're tight. Have a crew member check the tank for proper alignment and make sure all personnel are off the trailer while payload is being winched on. Continue to pay in both cables slowly, pulling the tank up the ramps until the street side track touches the curbside front payload chock. Then have a crew member chock the street side rear of the tank. If not already running, the APU must be started and run at full throttle. Release the semi-trailer parking brakes. Adjust the platform to the normal running height of 43 inches and reapply the parking brakes. Now the tank must be secured. First, the two front tie-down chains need to be attached and secured to the front of the tank. Remove the curbside rear payload chock block from the front street side of the tank. Pay in both winch cables until the chains are again tight and the front road wheels are firmly on top of the chock blocks. Then, chock the rear of the tank on both sides. Pay out both winch cables until they touch the top of the head tractor tires. This step is important for relieving cable twist Otherwise, injury could result. Be sure to unlatch and extend the gooseneck safety rail. Failure to extend the safety rail while attaching or removing payload winch cables could cause injury to personnel. Next, check for twists in the cables and disconnect them from the tank. Then, retract and latch the gooseneck safety rail. Failure to do this before operating the tractor and trailer will damage the equipment. Attach 2 shackles and 4 load binders to the rear payload tie-down rings. Then attach the shackles to the rear of the tank. Attach the street side parallel tie-down chain and curbside rear angle tie-down chain to the street side rear lifting shackle on the towing lug. Then attach the curbside parallel tie-down chain and street side rear angle payload tie-down chain to the curbside rear lifting shackle on the towing lug. Attach both parallel chains to parallel positioned load binders and operate the load binders to take up slack in the chains. Attach both curbside and street side rear angled payload tie-down chains to angled load binders. Be sure that the street side rear angle payload tie-down chain crosses over top of the curbside rear payload tie-down chain, or the chains will interfere with each other and damage the equipment. Finally, secure the rear payload chock blocks to the platform. Once the payload is secured, the head must be prepared for travel. First, the winch cables must be removed from the gooseneck cable guides. Make sure that your hands don't get between the clevis and winch, or injury could result. Pay in both the driver's side and passenger side cables and stow them on the stow hooks. Next, switch the engine speed control to low engine idle. Then lower the winch guard and lock it in place. Raise the loading ramps and adjust them to the furthest inboard position. Then raise the beacon warning light. If no adjustments are needed, push the suspension shutoff valve to the shutoff position. Shut down the APU. Raise the rear support legs. Stow the BII items used. Remove and stow the chock blocks. Turn off the PTO. And release the tractor parking brakes. The head is now loaded and ready to go. Move the transmission range selector to the appropriate range and continue the mission. When the head arrives at the drop-off point, the tractor must be prepared for unloading. First, make sure the CTIS is at the right setting. Remember to unload the semi-trailer on level ground whenever possible. Align and back the tractor semi-trailer combination in the area to be unloaded. Be sure to use ground guides when backing the vehicle. Ensure there's enough space for the ramps to be lowered and the disabled tank to be offloaded past the end of the ramps. Visually check the tractor semi-trailer offset angle and make any needed adjustments. As in the loading procedure, you'll need to put the tractor in neutral. Apply the parking brakes and turn the PTO on. Then make sure the beacon light is on and chock both the tractor and semi-trailer. Next, prepare the semi-trailer for offloading. Lower the beacon light. Adjust the ramp span to match the tank tracks. And remove the snatch block from the stow position. Raise the winch guard and release the auxiliary winch kickout. Remember to always wear hearing protection when near the winching station or operating winches. Untie the manila rope from the curbside front lifting eye and pass the rope over to the street side front lifting eye. Disconnect the auxiliary winch cable from the stowage point and pull it to the curbside free end of the rope. Then tie the rope to the auxiliary winch cable clevis. Untie the street side end of the rope from the street side front lifting eye. Pull the rope and the winch cable under the tank, through the snatch block, and forward to the driver's side cable. Then untie the rope from the cable. Engage both the passenger and driver's side winch kickout levers. Then the cable hold-down lever. Then unhook the cable and pay out about 24 inches. Attach the auxiliary winch cable to the driver's side cable. Engage the auxiliary winch kickout and disengage the driver's side winch kickout. Then pull the driver's side cable back through the snatch block and to the front street side of the payload. Before disconnecting any winch cables, be sure they're not twisted. A twisted winch cable can develop extreme tension when operated, which can cause injury when it's disconnected. Remove the auxiliary winch cable from the driver's side cable. Pay it in and stow. Pull the driver's side cable to the curbside front of the tank over both front tie-down chains and attach it to the front curbside tie-down chain and route it through the street side gooseneck cable guides and around the pivot pin sheave. Disconnect the passenger side winch cable from the stowage point and pay out about 24 inches. Then disengage the passenger side winch kickout. Finally, you'll begin to disconnect all rear tie-down chains and move them to the center of the platform. First, reposition the payload chock blocks on the platform. Remove 2 utility chains from the platform tie-down rings and rear payload chock block. Loosen and disconnect the rear angle tie-down chains from the rear angle load binders. Both parallel tie-down chains need to be tightened to move the tank slightly off the 2 rear payload chock blocks to reduce the pressure. If necessary, use a crowbar to help move the chock blocks out from underneath the tank tracks. Then move the blocks back up on both sides of the platform. Next, loosen and disconnect both parallel tie-down chains from the parallel load binders. And remove the 4 load binders and 2 shackles from the platform. Disconnect the chains from both street side and curbside shackles on the towing lugs at the rear of the tank. Position all chains and load binders in the center of the platform between the tank tracks. Engage the winch speed control switch to low. Engage the engine speed control switch to high idle. Briefly lock and then release. Remove 2 large shackles from 4 load binders and rear payload tie-down rings. Unlatch and extend the gooseneck safety rail. Attach and secure shackles to the upper left and right recovery eyes on the tank. Pay out the passenger side winch cable, route it through the gooseneck cable guide, and attach it to the upper right recovery eye. Retract and latch the gooseneck safety rail, and engage the passenger side winch kickout switch to pay in the cable until it's tight. The disabled tank is now ready for offloading. First, place the street side rear payload chock block along the street side edge above bogey number 4. and the curbside chock on the ground next to the street side number 1 bogie. Make sure to use extreme caution when removing the rear payload chock blocks from under the tank. Engage the driver's side winch kickout and push down on the driver's side winch lever to move the tank back to the rear chock block, and pull up on the passenger side winch lever to restrain it. Be sure to maintain even tension on both winch cables during the entire offloading procedure. Release the driver's and passenger side winch levers when the tank makes firm contact with street side rear payload chock block. Place the curb side rear payload chock firmly against the front street side of the tank. Before removing the winch cable, the winch operator must make sure each cable sags and touches the platform, relieving cable tension. Pay out both the driver's side and passenger side cables until they are touching the platform. Use extreme caution when removing winch cables, as the cable may be under tension or twisted. If the winch cable has tension when removed, carefully rotate the cable to relieve the tension. Don't let the cable twist or whip freely, or injury can result. Remove the driver's side cable from the curb side front tie-down chain. Disconnect the curbside tie-down chains from the tank and the platform. Disconnect the street side tie-down chain from the platform only. Lay the chains on the platform in front of the tank. And remove the passenger side winch cable from the right recovery eye. Attach the street side tie-down chain to the tank's lower tie-down lugs, allowing slack in the chain. This forms the lower Y chain used to winch off the tank. Then attach the curbside tie-down chain to the upper recovery eyes, forming the upper Y chain that controls the tank during unloading. Attach the driver's side winch cable to the center of the lower Y chain, and the passenger side cable to the center of the upper Y chain. Pay in both cables to remove slack. Start and run the APU, and release the semi-trailer parking brakes. Then adjust the platform height for offloading the tank, and lower both loading ramps. Then apply the semi-trailer parking brakes. Install the 2 curb guides on the beaver tail, and remove the rear payload chocks. 2 ground guides are needed for unloading. One guide stands on the curb side and another on the street side of the payload for ground control. The spotter on the curb side gives directions to the winch operator. The winch operator must maintain visual contact with the spotter at all times. Remember to make sure that no one is on the platform during winching operations. Engage winch speed control switch to low. Push the engine speed control switch to high engine idle. Briefly lock and then release. Pay out the passenger side winch cable to restrain the tank and the driver's side cable to take up the slack. It's important to maintain even tension on both cables during the entire offloading procedure, and payload adjustments must be kept to a minimum. The ground guide signals the operator when the driver's side winch cable is over the snatch block. The operator must pull up on both passenger and driver's side winch levers when given the signal and start paying out both cables. Then keep paying out both cables, allowing the tank to roll off the loading ramps. The ground guide signals the operator as soon as the tank clears the loading ramps. If the tank does not clear both loading ramps, both winch levers must immediately be released. Then consult your operator's manual for the steps that must be taken to finish the unloading procedure. As soon as the tank is unloaded, all cables, chains, load binders, and shackles are disconnected, removed, and stowed, referring to the manual for the proper procedures. Remove all curb guides and stow. Reassemble the 4 chock blocks. Adjust the platform to normal running height. Raise and secure the rear support legs, and raise and adjust the loading ramps. Finally, raise the beacon light, shut down the APU, stow the BII items, and chock blocks. Turn the PTO off, release the parking brakes, and move the transmission range selector to the appropriate range. The HET is now ready to continue its mission. The new heavy equipment transporter system, the most mobile tank transporter in Army history, delivering equipment where it's needed, when it's needed, and at a much lower cost than ever before.